Tim O'Malley with Tim Prister of Irish Illustrated and John Brice of FootballScoop.com. And guys, today's viewing is a little bit more brief. We had five periods today. Yesterday I had the full 15. I was able to kind of walk around, and my quick takeaway before getting into your in-depth is that the rotation at receivers is not necessarily set up for right now. They're not trying to find out who the starting and second X, Z, and W are. They're trying to find any package you can use, the best talents of all of them. And I want to ask Mike DeBrock this, but I think it's better left for mid-August anyway. How deep are they going to go? It's going to be a lot deeper than 6. But if you came to this first practice, you would see Jaden Greathouse in the slot, Jordan Faison at the X, Micah Gilbert at the W. That might be the case later on in the season, but those are just, I think, things they're working through right now.
Yeah, Mike DeBrock talked about the various packages that they will have, and he said it in the spring. You know, I mean, at LSU, whatever, it didn't matter what position you played, they moved them around. And I think it's really important to do it with this group because they're a little stacked in some spots and not so much in the others. That's why, and we said this in the spring, that Jordan Faison would get some look at the X at the number 1 field position. So, you know, I think it's all a good thing. I said it today in our in Thursday Thoughts that, you know, we thought they had a good receiving core in the spring, and then you arrive on the first day of fall camp, and there's Bo Collins running around with his 91 career receptions and 11 touchdowns. So it's a good group. I understand, you know, the doubt and the pessimism from some people, but if you're out here like we have been since the spring, there's a lot of good things happening with that receiver room.
And before you jump in, JB, I want to make clear, I'm not saying Micah Gilbert was the 1 W. I'm saying seeing Micah Gilbert at the W was just something different that you didn't see. Like, sometimes you saw him on the field during the spring.
Yeah, and we still saw 40 minutes of football today. Yeah. So we still got to, I think, get some really good morsels of information today. And to both your really good point on reps, they're doing a bunch of stuff right now to get more reps for everybody, but particularly for that wide receiver core. Another interesting thing that I saw them do that's a little different from what we've seen on the practice field in years past is that when they've got a quarterback throwing the route tree, that quarterback is hitting all 4 routes before rotating out. It was not that way in the past. And so that way a quarterback in the same series is getting a look at all 4 routes in the tree. I thought that helped them today. I thought we saw much greater efficiency today from Riley Leonard. Not that he was bad yesterday, but I thought Riley Leonard was really nice today.
I also had never seen quarterbacks switch fields. They were doing half fields. Yeah. Someone pointed out to me today, why is Riley Leonard throwing to Jack Polian? Right. Well, then Kenny Minchie came over and threw to Jack Polian. Riley Leonard switched fields. I think that's interesting to get them working out with everybody.
They were working on different things from one side of the field to the other.
And I think that's what Marcus referred to yesterday as two-spotting some. They're getting twice as many reps in as many areas as they can, particularly where they're needed at that wide receiver group, where there's now 11 scholarship guys, 17 guys working with them, and they've got much greater depth there than they've had the entire time I've been around the program.
We spoke with tight ends and safeties today, some specialists. Marty Biagi came in because not only is he special teams coach, but he is the assistant defensive back coach working with the safeties, also with Mike DeBrock. But before we get into those conversations, we should point out Gabriel Rubio announced today broken bone in his foot, expected back this season, completely off the record and just thrown out there as speculation. I should even say off the record. It's speculation. Someone was saying they could probably get him back in mid-October would be a situation. What they call him like the October call-up with our baseball references for Rubio. Look, it is a loss because he needed a lot. He needed this camp. He didn't have the spring, so Gabriel Rubio needed the camp. He's a much bigger body in there. Donovan Heinisch, he plays a lot of football. He's good at it, but you wanted the differential in body types there. Rubio and Heinisch is stark.
Yeah, but I thought they did the smart thing. They immediately performed surgery on him. Dr. Thomas Biemendorfer was the one that did the surgery from our walk-on offensive lineman here way back. So that's good. And, you know, I mean, he will definitely be back, I would say, at some point this year. It's just a question of when. I spent a lot of time around the defensive line today. Former Notre Dame defensive line coach Greg Madison was in town observing practice. Always good to visit with him. Enjoyed working with him back in the day. But, you know, that defensive line, I got to remind people, I get a little heat sometimes when I talk about body language of athletes. That was the phrase of L. Washington today as he was talking to their players. And it's important from the standpoint that, you know, that's the image you want to present to your opponent. That's the image you want to present to your coaches. That's the image you want to present to your teammates, the young teammates. That's what it's all about. It's coming out on the practice field and being ready to play. And L. Washington kept reminding them that body language counted today.
And I would point out Joe Rudolph did the same. Body language was a key.
He pointed it out loudly, too.
Yes, he did, yeah. Joe Rudolph and Mike DeBrock are the voices that carry the most across all the Arlotta practice fields, all through the IAC. Those are the voices we hear no matter what we're doing. But Joe Rudolph with the great intensity on that offensive front. Same starting five, first five, whatever you want to call it, that we saw yesterday. Jagasaw, and then Coogan and/or Rocco at left guard, Ashton Craig at center, Billy Schrouth right guard, and Emil Wagner at right tackle. Continues to be Sullivan Absher as the first backup left guard going in. So that's an interesting thing to continue watching. And those guys are already having to work combo blocks. They were already seeing some stunts and blitzes yesterday. There was more of that today. There was more of Joe Rudolph using his backup offensive lineman to stand up as Vipers, to stand up on the edge and present different looks. I bring that up just because I think it shows you the advanced teaching and the advanced nature of this preseason camp.
We're going to stick around near the line of scrimmage because we talked to 4 tight ends today, and Mike DeBrock. You had a chance to speak with Bauman and Eli Raridan. Cooper Flanagan was there as well. I didn't get a chance to ask DeBrock this, but it's actually probably saved better, as I mentioned, for mid-camp. The tight ends are going to affect the wide receiver rotation, too. If you're going to have 6, 7, 8 receivers, well, not if you're playing 2, 3 tight ends and rotating them in. It's a deep group, and the best news is I'm sure he did not take part in team again, but Mitchell Evans wasn't even wearing the brace today.
Yeah, and to that point, I think it was Tyler Horka who asked Kevin Ballman the question, okay, you guys all stay healthy. What can this tight end room be this year? He did not hesitate and said, I don't hesitate. We can be the best tight end unit in the country. I really believe that. We should be the best tight end unit in the country. Eli Raridan telling me specifically he's added 7 great pounds. He said, I'm more athletic, I'm stronger, I'm faster, I'm twitchier, but I've added 7 great pounds. The last thing I'll leave with is from speaking with multiple players today on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, as well as a couple of those coaches, the impact of Lauren Landau. And I know we'll dive more into it on next week's podcast, because I'm looking forward to asking more people about it tomorrow. But that's a recurring theme. That's a heavily recurring theme. And we heard Marcus open his press conference with shouting out that staff yesterday. I think that's significant.
Yeah, Eli Raridan just looks fantastic.
He does look better. It's interesting you said that. I hadn't thought about it, because I've always looked at Eli Raridan in these Augusts as, well, I hope they can work him back in. That has been the case. Now it's not. Now Eli Raridan's going to play this year. Mitchell Evans is going to play this year. I mean, Cooper Flanagan's a great tight end. He's the 3rd tight end of this team. Yeah. It's going to be a great tight end.
And a healthy Ballman. I mean, that's a foursome that's about as good as anybody in the country at tight end.
Safeties coach Marty Biagi and special teams coach Biagi. Dual role today. I asked him about special teams. It's early for special teams for him. The key is, though, they only brought in about 7 summer freshmen. And he said he was able to identify a lot of the core guys in the spring and the summer. And 2 of the guys are going to be core guys. They're just 2 of the best athletes on the team, Rod Hurd and Bo Collins. They weren't even able to practice with him in the spring, but he said they were engaged in every meeting. You're going to see Hurd on special teams, Bo Collins. And I asked the natural, Jack Kaiser's led or been second on special teams for the last 4 seasons. He wants to do that again. They can't let him do that again necessarily, but they're going to find room for everybody. And Biagi said the advantage he has now, being in defensive meetings, is he kind of knows what's coming his way as a special teams coach. Who can help him there?
I talked to Biagi about Rendell, his punter, James Rendell, and I said, we in the media have speculated about fake punts, and I wrote something the other day about, maybe in punt formation he can go get under center because, his background as an Australian football player certainly lends itself to going under center and then working your way for that 4th and short. And his response to that was no comment.
Yeah, that's funny. One more quick Biagi note on James Rendell. He said the op time is already clean. He likes where they're at from an op time, from a get-off time standpoint, and hang time on the punts. He's flirting with 5 seconds when he really gets a hold of one.
I spoke with Xavier Watts. It was the specific reason was to ask him about the younger guys. I even told him, hey, you've graduated to the point where I'm not going to ask you about yourself because, hey, surprise, he's on the Bronco Nagurski watch list as the reigning Bronco Nagurski winner. So we joked about that a little, but I asked Watts about Talich, Don Schuler, and Rod Hurd, and the first thing he said of Talich, of course, is the length, and that he noticed last year when he started making special teams plays, starting not just being involved in snaps, making some special teams plays, that his confidence grew in practice. And he was not a 2-deep player then. They had DJ Brown, Ramon Henderson. Now he is. He says you could see the difference in his confidence this year. Don Schuler and Rod Hurd, as we saw, are rotating right now as the number one safety next to Watts. And Watts even mentioned, he was like, I have not had a lot of time with Rod yet. This is practice number 2. We can't do that much stuff in the summer where it really counts for communication. So I do think there's a battle going on there. The expectation is, of course, that Rod Hurd's experience will win out over Schuler's future.
Yeah, but I tell you what, Schuler is narrowing the gap quickly. And I talked to him a little bit about, his spring experience, because he was injured last year and really was on the shelf early on, coming out of spring, was he not?
Yep.
So I said, as your confidence raised going from the spring to the start of fall camp, and he's like, my confidence was good in the spring. And I think we saw a lot of evidence of that. He's got a little bit more size than Rod Hurd. That's a good situation. I mean, if they're battling it out, then it gives you the flexibility with Hurd to spell Jordan Clark at nickel. He's got a ton of experience. You talked to him about that prior to that, but I think Adon Schuler's on a really fast track. And as you look at these positions in the secondary, I've been saying, well, they're inexperienced here and there. A guy like Adon Schuler can take that comment about inexperience and throw it aside pretty quickly.
Last thing from me, I think we're going to hear more and more of this, but T.O., you and I already talked about it a little bit. The competitive drive and fire of Riley Leonard is becoming very much a part of this team's identity. I asked a number of different players and coaches about it today. It's going to be fun to unroll those over the coming weeks of camp and hear more and more about it. Mike DeBrock saying, like, that guy has competitive fire. That's a universal trait that I believe all the really good quarterbacks share. And then Kevin Bauman telling me just directly, we had a team practice this summer. He flat out balled out. We'll have more on that, but the competitive drive that Riley Leonard is bringing to that position, I think, is starting to become part of the team identity.
I'll be vague on this one. We'll have more from campus in 5 minutes of practice, or 5 segments of practice, and some reporting sooner rather than later. That's the timing we're going to have on that one, okay? For Tim Prister of Irish Illustrated, that's John Brice of FootballScoop.com. Thank you for watching Irish Illustrated's Instant Analysis.